chance to hear it, so let her tell it. People on the streets say Sabrina speaks. Tune into the show, she will let you know. Tell all your friends and family. Real talk is no joke. You get the news straight up from grassroots and concerns. You hear with some people gone. So tell all your friends to tune in to the
Good evening,
show.
Cayman. I'm Sabrina Turner, and welcome to Sabrina Speaks, your daily dose of clarity, truth, and community insights. Every weekday from 5 to 6:30 p.m., we're tackling the issues that affect you, from national headlines to grassroots concerns. Whether you're in traffic or winding down your day, this is your chance to hear it straight and speak your truth. So buckle up, Cayman. We're not holding back.
This is the show. We gotta let you know. Now we got to go.
And now here's Sabrina.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, one and all, to our friends and family all over the world, near and far. How are you? It's good to be back here with you in this virtual space for another episode of Sabrina Speaks, Voices of the Islands, conversations for the world. Yes, and the podcast where voices rise, stories unfold, and inspiration takes center stage. Hope y'all have had a good weekend and you're excited about this new week, despite everything that's going on. But yeah, I see you, Marshall. How are you? I hope you had a good weekend as you all take your time and come to the front of the class. No late passes today will be given. But yes, it's good to be back with you all here for another episode of Sabrina Speaks. You know, I'm living the moment pretty much in reminiscent, because yesterday, even though here in the Cayman Islands we celebrate it for the entire month, you know, officially yesterday was International Women's Day. And, you know, I was just sitting back here watching the energy and seeing everything that was shared yesterday. It was something different, to be honest with you. But the energy of it, just basking in the energy of it with gratitude, definitely. And that's not all. Also with strength and pulling out a little bit of quiet resilience. This is so many women carry every single day of our lives. You know, even though it felt like a breath of fresh air in the middle of everything that is happening around us, a reminder that even in uncertain times, you know, we continue to still rise. We continue as women to lead, to hold our families and our communities together. And I really hope that all of our women out there, no matter what role you play, that you really enjoyed the national recognition that was given to you. And that's exactly where today's conversation begins, to be honest, because it brings us all together. But while we were celebrating our progress, and there's also navigating a world that really feels so much heavier, from rising costs overall to we're seeing global tensions, and right here at home as well. You know, yes, Friday when we were speaking and Thursday, Parliament passed a number of private members' motion bills, and I was out and about over the weekend and I could hear the conversations being had. I just so happened to hear a lot of talk, and I've gotten some calls as well in regards to some of these motions that were passed. And yeah, what will happen? How will it shape? I've heard a little bit of misunderstanding, to be honest, with especially the mask wearing one. And I'll go into that a little bit this evening to let you know really what happens next. And even some very dear friends who are working in the service, Like, what happens now? Because people are asking a lot of questions with these motions passed. What's next? Is this a law? I've gotten a number of calls, even on over the weekend. Where are we now in mixing up the immigration transition? Some of that with even some of these motions. And so it's a little bit confusing to some who isn't following it. They only hear snippets of the live broadcasts. And I'm so happy that I'm versed, that I can really just calm people down a little bit when I do get those calls. But also it is imperative, even for the seniors who I engage with a lot, to just be able to be in that position that I can honestly answer them and maintain calm, maintain cool, and just provide a level of education or inform them as to where we are. And I'm hoping that today you can join me on this, and I can try to recap some of what transpired, tying it into all of the uncertainties. Because even speaking with family members, they were saying, everything now you see on social media, it's about the war and everything that's happening. There is a clip that I saw on CNN in regards to black rain, like it was raining. I think it's in Lebanon. And because of the explosions that are happening, it rained. But guess what was in the rain? Oil, droplets of oil. And that is going to do havoc on some of these places with all that's happening globally and the geopolitical tensions that continue to escalate. So today on Sabrina Speaks, I'm hoping that we're grounding ourselves in all of it, the uncertainty, the responsibility, and definitely the courage that it will take to keep us moving forward. And I just want to welcome all of you who are just joining me, but the content you're about to hear, including any discussions or opinions from myself, guests, and participants, is intended solely for general informational and entertainment purposes. It's not a substitute for professional, legal, medical, or financial advice. So I encourage you to consult with a qualified professional for specific concerns. Bridge Media Limited and all its affiliates disclaims all liability for any decisions or actions taken in reliance on the information presented. 345-936-8255 is the number to call to join in on the conversation this evening. And you're always free to comment on whatever social media platform you're streaming us live from, or you can send me a private WhatsApp as well. And I will do my best to definitely address your questions or actually include it into the conversation. Let's take a look at what's making our weather for this evening and into tomorrow, thanks to our Cayman Islands National Weather Service. Now, the synopsis calls for moderate winds with slight to moderate seas are expected across the Cayman Islands area as the ridge of high pressure dominates the weather pattern. Isolated showers are expected from time to time due to a low level moisture embedded within the threads. In addition, upper level trough will be over the area from tomorrow evening, and radar imagery show a few showers south of the Cayman area moving westward. The forecast for tonight calls for partly cloudy skies with a 30% chance of showers. Temperatures will fall to the mid-70s. Winds will be east to northeast, 10 to 15 knots, and seas will be slight with moderate with wave heights of 2 to 4 feet. The forecast for tomorrow calls for partly cloudy skies with a 30% chance of showers. Temperatures will rise to near mid-upper 80s with a heat index of 93. Winds will be east to northeast, 10 to 15 knots, and seas will be slight to moderate with wave heights of 2 to 4 feet. There will be a low tide this evening at 7:35, a high tide at 4:32 in the morning. Sun will set this evening at 6:32, and sun will rise tomorrow morning at 6:38. Now, the outlook calls for the upper level trough to produce brief instability across the Cayman area Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Thanks to our friends over there at the Cayman Islands National Weather Service, and there you can plan your movement. Let's just take our attention and look into what news is making our headlines today right here at home, coming out of the weekend. Lots going on, and definitely we're in short of news from around the world. Yes. Parliament has passed there are two private members' motions on Thursday aimed at strengthening public safety and protecting young people in the Cayman Islands. Brought by Georgetown West MP Perlina McLaw-Lobsden, calls on the government to explore restrictions, including a potential ban on social media use for minors. Now, the motion highlights rising concerns about cyberbullying, harmful content, and the mental health impact constant online exposure. The government will now consider the next steps, including consolidation and legislative drafting. On the same day, lawmakers also supported a motion to ban face masks and full facial coverings in public, except for medical, occupational, or religious reasons. Supporters say that the measure will help deter crime and assist police in identifying suspects. Now, both of these motions now move into the policy development phase as government prepares its formal response. In other news making today's headlines, women now make up 10% of the Cayman Islands regiment, with female soldiers stepping into more leadership roles. Lance Corporal Crystal Eiton says service has boosted confidence, discipline, and teamwork. In the major land donated projects to Cayman Brac biodiversity, the Platts family has donated 3 acres of pristine native forest on Cayman Brac to the National Trust, safeguarding rare species, including mature mastic trees and native orchids. Turning our focus over to the Caribbean region and top stories making that today. CIBC Caribbean will stop issuing and processing British pound checks and bank drafts from March 31st, citing shifts towards electronic payments and changes in correspondent banking services. Other headlines making Caribbean news: the U.S. Virgin Islands remain free of African swine fever, but travelers are being warned not to transport pork products as the virus continues circulating in nearby Caribbean nations. Top stories making out of the United Kingdom. Pokemon and Pokia has fallen short of expectations in the UK charts due to severe retail undersupply and major outlets showing no stock available. In other UK news, amid raising global tensions and inflations, concerns linked to the Iran conflict, UK officials says that they are ready to support the release of oil reserves to stabilize markets. Turning our attention now, the United Kingdom marked Commonwealth Day with annual service at Westminster Abbey, celebrating unity, culture, and cooperation across the 56-nation Commonwealth family. And yes, Cayman was represented. Our very own delegation, Honorable Nicholas DaCosta and Member of Parliament Roy Tatum, attended the 74th Westminster Seminar on Effective Parliaments in London as part of the week's official engagements. Honorable DaCosta shared his reflections on Facebook, saying, "I'm honored to join parliaments from across the Commonwealth at the 74th Westminster Seminar, Effective Parliaments in London." He added that he looks forward to meaningful dialogues, sharing learning and strengthening partnerships that advance good governance across the Commonwealth. Commonwealth Day continues to highlight the shared values, democratic traditions, and collaborative spirit that connect member nations, including the Cayman Islands. And in some top stories from the international perspective, global markets react to the U.S.-Israel-Iran conflict intensifies. Now, Israel has resumed strikes on Iran. Oil prices are surging, and global markets are reacting sharply as the conflict enters its 10th day. Now, analysts warns the region is preparing for a prolonged confrontation. Also, explosion in the U.S. Embassy in Oslo. An explosion at the U.S. Embassy in Norway is under investigations, with authorities not ruling out terrorism as a possible cause. And before we wrap up today's news segment, I want to shift from policy to public safety and into something that brings our communities together in a different way. Yes, guess what? Registration is now open for the final Deputy Governor's 5K signature event that is supported countless charities and brought thousands of residents to the start line year every year. Yes, a final farewell to the finish line is a chance for all of us to show up for a good cause. Now, registration is officially open for what will be the final Deputy Governor's 5K, marking the end of a signature event that has united the Cayman Islands for more than a decade. As I said, this theme, Final Farewell to the Finish Line, reflects both celebration and gratitude as the community prepares to take part in the last run under the Deputy Governor's leadership. Now, over the years, the DG's 5K has grown from a small wellness initiative into one of the largest charitable events in the country, raising millions for causes ranging from mental health services to youth development and emergency response. Organizers say they're expecting a record turnout as residents, families, schools, and corporate teams come together one more time to support a cause bigger than themselves. Now, the event has long been praised for its ability to bring people from every district and every walk of life to same starting line, promoting health, unity, and community spirit. So, yes, participants are encouraged, though, to register early as spaces typically fill quickly, especially with this being the final edition of the race. Now, there you have it. Who's going to go? Marshall, are you going to go? Connie Bonnie, will you be there? Let's see. Yes, the final lap. Welcome, welcome, one and all. It's good to have you here with us. I want to say happy birthday to everyone who's celebrating a birthday, and our sincere condolences as well go to those who are mourning the loss of a loved one. From all of us here and Sabrina Speaks, we just like to keep it real because life really, we're all connected some way, somehow. It is good to see you, Marshall. Yes, your weekend was good. I hope same true for you. I've been working. I've been burning the candle from both ends. Someone tell you about it. Busy, 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 Marshall. Happy Monday to you too as well. Aliana is in the house. How you doing? How was your weekend? Aliana, you go do the walk or you go run? Which one? You go sign up for the DG? For the final one? Wonder who's going to sign up. Who's going to sign up? Yeah, I'll be on the sidelines cheering all of you on. For those of you just tuning in, it's a pleasure to be here. Yes, we're talking about the uncertainty that we're living in here. And, by all means, at any time, the phone lines are open. Even though as a content creator, I have to provide you with content. But I also take steer and guidance based on your feedback. And if there's something that's really bugging you or plaguing you, by all means, feel free to mention it here. Join in, give us a call, WhatsApp, and we'll definitely do our best to unpack it and include it into the discussion. That's what this space is for. So it is not just structured. You may see me have flyers out and start off on a notion of what we want to cover. But a lot of it is based on what people have called me on, what conversations I have heard, and all of that sort of stuff. So by all means, I have to show up. I have to have content. And you are all invited to call in. Even if it comes off a little bit off topic, that's fine. We will entertain you here. I just don't want you to think that, because she's speaking about A, we can only call in about that. But if it is a part where we're learning together, we ask your discretion during that time, and always to remain respectful of each one's opinions because they all matter. And most importantly, this is your space. Just remember that. But the phone lines are wide open. 345-936-8255 is the number to either WhatsApp or call in. Aliano, I can't in HSA. Oh, really? Oh, speedy recovery, Aliano. You're an inpatient there. Oh, and you have tuned in. Thank you so much. We will heal with you and send you lots of love out there and well wishes from all of us, Aliano. I hope you get better soon and all works out for you. Yes, but thank you still for joining us, even on your hospital bed. as you aid recovery in your recovery. There we go. We got to send you lots of loves. Just show Aliano all the love. Let's see all those hearts going up and those emojis to Aliano, who is recovering. Thank you for tuning in. Jimbo's in the house. Say hello, Sabrina, Connie, and all who are watching and listening. It's spring cleaning time and I'm purging. Oh, really? I started doing a little bit of that as well as I took down. Well, I did it when I took down all of the Christmas decorations, that sort of stuff. And then I found some stuff for Easter. So I gave it a little bit, and pretty much from the first weekend of this month, no, last weekend of last month, I actually put up my wreaths with my Easter eggs and that sort of stuff. I'm just one of those persons. You would swear I got a whole heap of little children around me, but I get bored very easily. And I must say, I enjoy seasons. I enjoy decorating for the seasons. So yes, I like to put out the summer cushions. Over the years, you have these stuff, and if you keep them well and you put them in your containers or you put them away nice, I think Connie will understand what I'm talking about here. You can have these things for years, and you can actually over time really just change your space for the season. Like for the month of February, I had a runner with red hearts on it that I just placed on the table. And then I made sure that I looked for little kitchen towels that from time to time had nice little lovey-dovey messages on them, just to get you in the mood. And then, oh yeah, did I say that? Ooh. Anyhow, yeah, to get you in the mood, in the love mood. And then now we're in March, heading into Easter. I see where I'm now putting out some stuff that looks like Easter eggs, a lot of the pinks, the greens, and I got a few towels that has the pink Easter bunnies and stuff. Yeah, I'm one of those. I don't know what you call that, Jimbo. So poor me, I'm always cleaning because I'm always setting for the other stage. Yeah, so it keeps me going and keeps me occupied. Jim keeps me out of trouble. That's what it does. Keeps me out of trouble. Barbara G, good evening. How are you? Welcome. Aliano says, I hope so. The experience being good. The food needs some more Cayman. Oh, the hospital food. Oh my gosh. Yeah, but maybe that's based on your diet. I do know that some facilities do rave about their food. Unfortunately, if you're at HSA, they have not done very well, or people don't really like their food. But bearing in mind, having been a former nurse, if you have dietary restrictions, they're not going to give you food that is outside your dietary restrictions, Aliano. So we don't want nobody stealing in any little food for you that you shouldn't necessarily be having, if that is the case, if you have dietary restrictions. But yeah, I know. Just look at the bright side. Maybe if you comply to whatever it is they're serving you, who to tell? You may have that body ready for carnival. Get that foot heel and you're ready. You lost some weight and you're ready for carnival. Who to tell? Aliana, look at the bright side. But I'm really honestly hoping that you will recover soon and you get out there and making sure that nobody gives you anything that you're not supposed to have while you're in there, just in case you have dietary restrictions. Yes. But yeah, just looking at, let's take our attention over. I was speaking to my cousin over the weekend, and it really struck a chord with me when you could hear the frustration in her voice when she says, the algorithms and everything that is happening around the world. And then I'm hearing more and more persons are getting a little on edge. They are a bit nervous with what's happening globally. We have had talks here on all the social media platforms and every news station you can hear locally and every TV that you put on. The talk is exactly what's happening around the world with war, with the cost of oil prices going up, how that could impact our goods that we get on the shelves, to shipping lanes that are being now actually what you would say blocked because of geopolitical tensions. And then right here at home with us trying to navigate life on a whole. But you're hearing fatigue in people's voices, and then you're hearing confusion because they're juggling mentally all of the realities of life. Right now, for example, Alian, I'm going to use you as an example. You're actually recovering, but I'm quite sure on the top of your mind, you're also worried. How is what's happening with cost of gas, cost of goods on the store, you being out from work, medical bills? We're seeing where there's some legislation is actually changed where now, your member of parliament is the deciding factor with whether or not you can get indigent insurance. Not saying that that was not a requirement that was needed a long time ago. But what I'm saying, a lot of things are actually circling in people's minds, and there is some sort of worry. Jim, I agree with you when you said sometimes you need to take a break from the TV, sometimes you need to take a break from the news. But I really don't think it is that easy to do, even if you want to, because we're seeing what's happening locally. We're seeing and we're hearing what is a reality of whether or not there could be other tensions still brewing within our Caribbean. We're hearing where Venezuela themselves are getting a bit upset and tired, quote, of the demands of the President of the United States. And we can see what appears, if you don't follow my rules, I will blow you up. I will do what I have to do. That type of mentality that's happening in the geopolitical space. So to say that we are in any way sheltered from what's happening, we are totally mistaken. This is not to bring any fear or concern, or to fearmonger it. But it's a reality. We are grappling right now with immigration reform that has had to be pushed back. People are saying we want to know whether or not we need to see the regulations. We saw another amendment again. People are actually getting confused and they're questioning, have we really done what we have been asking for, or has the floodgates been open? And then you have those who are questioning, is this law now in effect? Let me just make it clearer how it works. When a motion like what just passed on the floor of Parliament, the one on the medical indigent, the ones about the importation of recycling material for duty-free that was tabled or brought forward by the member for Georgetown Central, including the mask wearing, including the banning of social media for children under 16. When motions of any, be it but private members' motion or from the government, is debated and supported, therefore passed on the floor of Parliament, those only set the stage for government now to either amend a law, if it is an amendment, or to start drafting the law that will actually give or head in the direction that the motion intended to set out. If there are no laws, then what that motion does, it starts the process. It doesn't mean that right now, if you're seen in the grocery store, if you're immunocompromised and you have to wear a mask, that, you're breaking the law. There is no law yet for that. This is just discussion. This is opening the door to evoke conversation, to at some point in time, the public will weigh in on these laws. So if you're aggrieved that your freedoms are taken away from you, let me take the mask wearing one, is because there's a broader problem where national security is concerned, and you're mistaking that to mean that if you have a flu, but you still have to go to the supermarket, or if you have a low immune system, or you just want to protect yourself from the germs that are out there, an N95 mask is not what they're trying to ban. You're not going to necessarily have to walk around with some license to say, well, I can use this if it is just discreet over your nose and mouth, similar to what we were wearing for COVID. This particular motion, for full clarity, was for those persons who use a t-shirt and all you can see is their eyes, and they're not either on a work site. It's not a burqa for religious reasons. And they're driving a car, that sort of stuff, entering commercial locations. Now, bearing in mind, at this very point, businesses have the right to says no shirt, no shoes, no service. We see where certain rules have already been put in place based on financial institutions, the banks, that sort of stuff. You can't wear caps. You can't wear shades. You understand? So what they're putting in law right now is at a different level than what I'm hearing people are conversing about. What they're talking about in this motion is where it becomes a risk, a ski mask. You know, you pull those Tams over your face. How would you feel? I'm walking into the supermarket right now with a full face ski mask. You don't know who I am. I mean, yeah. If you're just grocery shopping, that not making no sense. Stuff like that is what this bill, this motion, is actually addressing. And there are some concerns because there is information released by the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service that they're making investigations that much more difficult because we as society have actually become normalized to gardeners, construction workers, people wearing these full face stuff on, you know, if you're having and this was a perfect example. If your gardening company comes, you don't know if they have a crew of 5-6 persons to do your yard. Can you really honestly identify who cleans your yard if you're using one of the big companies? Some of them, you don't know them. You can't see them. You can't identify them. You only know you see a vehicle out in the front that's the branding with the company that you've engaged in services, but you don't know. You really don't know who's cleaning your yard if you have to identify them. Right? And that is where the problem comes. And based on the contributions made by other elected members of parliament, what I've just shared with you are some of the examples of why it is important that the government consider this motion, because there is a bigger risk and it's time to take it back 3 notches or so. And another thing that came out of all of this in another conversation that I had was, what next then? And I said, what happens next is that legal drafting team now has to go and they may look at other jurisdictions at how certain things are put in place. And they will get a framework of a wording that will bring the results that this motion, in consultation with the people, of what we want it to yield. What happens thereafter is that it goes through public consultation. It's then taken back on the floor. Public consultation could mean your MP then calls a district meeting in their constituencies, or they have an update meeting and they say, look, I need to bring this to your attention. This bill is out and this is what it means. In layman's terms, this is what it means, yada, 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 if they want to just do it based on constituency, right? Once that is finished, if there's any feedback, then all of the information is fed back into the departments or ministry that will be leading that change. It's only thereafter that that is taken into consideration. If there are amendments to the substantive drafting law that has to be done, they may or may not be included. Then it's taken back to caucus, it be ventilated, there's presentations that is happening. And then if it meets their satisfaction, then it's then forwarded then to the cabinet for a final decision. And then after it's in cabinet, then, at some point it'll do the process and make it to the floor of parliament to debate. It is only after that, if it is supported, then that it goes to the floor of parliament, on the floor of parliament to be debated, and then it becomes law. And what happens then is that, remember, there's a commencement order and all of that. So it all depends on how fast this all happens that will determine when the start date is. I'm having some buffering issues, so just please bear with me. I'm seeing where it's buffering. So if you are, it's beyond my control, okay? We've been having some internet issues all day, all weekend. Yes, I'm sorry. We just had some issues with the streaming, so my apologies. Yeah. So I just want you to know that we are going through a number of changes, and these things just doesn't happen like that. There is going to be public involvement and discussions as well that will ensue. So I want people to understand step by step, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell, how before it becomes law. Remember, the immigration amendment that was further amended and was supposed to come in law in March, that's now been delayed until the 1st of April. We still haven't seen the regulations. I'm deliberately doing this to see where the whole law that was debated on and passed in Parliament in December still haven't taken effect, which means we're still business as usual, but under the current law. So I'm deliberately doing this for you to say that these private members' motions that were all supported on the floor of Parliament on Thursday, it could be a while yet before that becomes law. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Sabrina Speaks. You're live.
Good evening, Sabrina, and good evening to the listeners as well. Very interesting, the issue of motions, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, you are explaining everything that people need to keep in mind about motions.
Yeah, it takes a while. And the only reason why is because I was out and about and I'm hearing the discussions, even though I'm not a part of it. And I walk and I smile and but people are having the discussions, but there's a lot of miscommunication in how they're engaging because they do not understand the process. You understand? So the
And yeah.
conversations that are being had are off because they don't understand the process.
Yeah, and if they understand the process, their expectations will be tempered, and they will when there's some apparent delay in bringing it into force. When people understand the process, they'll understand that very often the delay is not even a delay at all. It's just that the process takes long. And I think it's very good that you, as being a former minister, I mean, you are saying these things from your general knowledge, having been a civil servant as well as a minister.
Unscripted.
And I can speak.
Unscripted to just do it, and then you can put the legal side to it, because people need to understand that even getting it in black and white, you also need to make sure that the government is prepared to fund it, because whatever government departments and ministries that are going to be responsible for bringing this out to yield the outcome people needs, the various departments need to be funded, staffed, given the necessary equipment. And guess what? What's the sense of a law if it's not enforced? Continue.
If it's not enforced, exactly. One of the, I find this confusion sometimes, but you've already covered it. In that, once Parliament passes a resolution, that resolution is not a law in itself.
Correct.
It cannot be enforced. It is a decision by Parliament to authorize government, more than authorize it, like order government to say, okay, fine, you go and prepare this piece of legislation. So it may take a few months before the legislation is actually done. It may take 2 years. It may take 3 years. How long did it take, for example, when government decided, although I don't think it was a motion in government, but when they decided, well, they are going to do some changes to the mortgage law to better protect people in who put mortgages. I mean, we started talking about this, I think, in about 2018, like really actively, 2018. And it's only about this year or late last year when they finally brought in a piece of legislation. Now, we hope that this won't take that long, but it's just people need to understand that once this is, the motion is done, the motion now goes to government, and now that proposed legislation has to now go join the queue of the government legislative program.
Yes.
Okay. it has to go and join the queue. And then I don't know the details of the legislation, but usually it is of the motion. Usually the motion just says pass legislation which will do this. So they'll have to go to legislative drafting, also find out, can this be done by regulation, or does it need to an amendment to an existing law? Because sometimes that's something where the Attorney General and legislative drafting have a look at it and they say, well, no, this one is very easy. We can do it in a traffic regulations, or we can do it in any other regulation. So all those details now have to be worked out. And eventually it will be done. I remember when I was working on the traffic law, and it was, I think that time was it? No. It was being talked about under Minister Arded McLean that cell phones should be, there should be a restriction on use of cell phones for people who were driving. Now, the traffic law that he piloted through the House, by that time we were not ready to include that.
Right.
He dealt with other things, but when Minister Julie came in, then we dealt with that. And people were saying, well, just this line, which says that they can't use cell phones when they drive.
It's
So
not
I
that
said,
simple.
what? It's not that simple, you see, because we have to look at it. Okay, there will be some exemptions. For example, there are exemptions for police officers. There are exemptions for members of the public who are calling 911.
Correct.
I mean, if you look at just that restriction and the exceptions to it, it's about nearly 2 pages in the particular law. So those things tend to take a very, very long time.
Yeah.
But talking about motions, I would have loved to see some kind of statistics being kept about how many motions which are passed by the Legislative Assembly are actually implemented. Whether or not they are legislative, how many are implemented? And I ask this because partly because of what I mentioned last week about the
Mhm.
motion by the Honorable Bernie Bush to say, well, we are only going to give status only to people who marry Caymanians and by descent, and it was all agreed. But what happened to it? It was never followed. So I would love, if it was possible, for Parliament to keep statistics of how many motions are passed and how many are implemented, and if they are implemented, how soon after they are passed, that they should be implemented. That's always very, very important, not just for accountability, but also just for management. I remember some time back I went to an international conference. I used to be on the council of the Commonwealth Association of Legislative Council. And I went, actually, that's the time I was first elected. Well, I was re-elected in Hong Kong. And when we were there, a lady from British Columbia gave a talk about legislation. It wasn't about motions. They kept in their office a list of legislation whenever it is drafted, and then they kept statistics of how many of those pieces of legislation are implemented, how soon after they are requested they are implemented, and that allowed them very much to manage their systems, to ensure that they are not drafting unnecessary legislation, and to find out where there were delays, to find out where the delays with legislative drafting or were the delays with the instructing officials and those kinds of things. I would really love to see that, but
where does the responsibility lie, though? Because based on the flow of communication, these motions were supported on the floor of Parliament. It is up to the clerk of the Parliament now to feed those decisions up to Cabinet, for Cabinet to make a decision as to where they're going to go. Now, in the Hansards, everyone supported it, right? So once the clerk actually communicates the minutes of that sitting, they pass it on. Who then would be responsible for making sure that it is brought back in a timely manner? Would there be a part where the Parliament then has something that they, maybe through the office of the Ombudsman, to report back to the people that they have done their part, but this is still outstanding, that's outstanding? I'm trying to map it out in my head so it does answer what you're saying, because once Parliament passes it on to the Cabinet for the elected arm, they then farm it out to whatever department, ministries, in order to take charge and do. Now, are we setting timelines on these things? Or is it based on whatever legislation and what is in the strategic policy statement for this administration? Who is responsible for doing just that? Holding the Cabinet then accountable and then reporting back to Parliament to be in accordance with standing order? Is it the Speaker? Is it the clerk? Is it both?
Yeah, this is part of the problem that I mentioned a little earlier, but you've now got into specifically who is responsible. Of course, okay, if it is if the subject matter falls under, for example, the Ministry of responsible for transportation, then that minister will be responsible for it. Now, the motion might not say so, but the way government works, they'll just say, okay, fine, this motion, who's supposed to implement it? Okay, the subject matter falls under the minister responsible for infrastructure or whatever. And then the minister now will take that up, and they will usually have to do a cabinet paper first to flesh it out a little bit more and take it to cabinet so that there's approval in principle. Because remember, the motion is usually just a page or so saying that this should be done. Exactly. So now the ministry has to now take that motion, work with the technical people and prepare a cabinet paper to say, okay, this is being done as a result of the motion, but in terms of further details, this is the way we think that it's going to work, and then get cabinet to approve some further broad details as to how that is supposed to be done. And then after that, it goes back to the ministry. The ministry prepares even more detailed instructions now to go to legislative drafting, and then it goes on from there.
Listen to this. It's okay with all of that context being on hand. If the motion is presented on the floor of Parliament by the sitting administration. But when you have
Mm-hmm.
private members motion, aka the opposition, who is not sitting in
Mm-hmm.
caucus, but they can be invited, who's not sitting in
Mm-hmm.
cabinet, the context for private members motions now is where both sides of the aisle work together in order to provide more context, more details. So when the respective ministry gets their marching orders and their policy advisors, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
That opposition person that tabled that motion, their notes would be substantive, hence the collaboration of working together. That is why it's called bipartisan. Because even though they're not
Exactly.
sitting in caucus or sitting in cabinet,
Mm-hmm.
the private members'
Mm-hmm.
motion, the opposition, not a part of the government,
Mm-hmm.
but because the government says we will support it, compliment them for everything. Yes, this is long overdue. We're happy you brought it
Mm-hmm.
forward. That member of the opposition then is the one who's holding, save by what's captured in the Hansard for the debate, the opening statement, the closing statement before the votes got done. That private member, that member of the opposition, holds all the information.
Yeah, exactly. You see, if I were writing a piece of legislation like that, I get my instructions, of course, from the instructing ministry. But once the papers that come to me show me that this comes out of a motion of an opposition member,
Mm-hmm.
then I would ask the government to say, well, can we have consultation with the opposition member so that we can see what they had in mind? Now, we have to be very careful in doing that. We have to ensure that the minister concerned has authorized that consultation. Yeah, because I can't just get up and say, well, I need to consult and tell maybe the chief officer to say, can you bring in the member of the opposition or can we go and see him? No, we have the
But
minister
you see
has
where
to say.
politics can distort a good piece of legislation?
Yeah. So it's because you see, remember that the government is the government, and they can be very sensitive sometimes
Exactly.
to it appearing as if you are giving precedence to the opposition. They got elected for a reason, and that's a statement that they are the ones who should be in charge. They can consult. And it's good that they consult. I always liked a lot of consultation as a drafter, because if they don't consult enough, what tends to happen is that we go to Parliament, the bill is published, and then those people who were not consulted now are coming at the last minute. You don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you don't want, if the bill goes to Parliament, the private member who brought the motion to say, hey, this is not what I had in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But that's too late. What you want to do, you want to consult very early, and if there are some disagreements, the minister and the member, exactly, they hash it out. If there are policy issues, I want clarity on those, so that by the time it goes to the House, they are more or less agreed on the most of the detail.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's but in the end, Parliament has to develop, like I said last time, some kind of committee of government assurances, because that also has a role, not so much the role in developing the legislation, but more like a role of trying to ensure that it is done, and to keep records of if there are problems with implementing it. They can look at it. Now, there was a thing last week, Sabrina, a person called in and wanted to know something about my courses. I just wanted to give them a further answer to that. Because they were, my answer to it is that it's kind of difficult, because I hesitated last time to mention it because it's sort of like far into the front. I did say that I need a partner, and somebody can be in touch if they are interested. But I do plan to do a podcast. I do plan to do a podcast, but I can't do the podcast now because I'm too busy. I'm writing a book on statutory interpretation in the Commonwealth Caribbean. I really don't have, and I have to finish that this year.
Yeah.
But I want, towards the end of the year, I want to be able to, because these courses were set to be one, they need now to be split up into short podcasts of about 10 to 15 minutes each. okay, which I can start putting on YouTube. They have to be structured. The content is there, so it's not too much work, but still it has to be now parceled in different segments, so that I can put it on YouTube. But I mean, that's what I wanted to mention to that particular person, so they can look out for that, and when it comes, they might be able to benefit from that. By the way, I should mention something about support I had gotten initially about the I'm waiting for that support to translate into the support for the courses. But I just thought I should say that on the side.
All
But
right.
talking about the politics, the more national issues, this issue about the immigration matters, and how it ties into all these motions, I think is very, very important. I think government, in my view, government, when they do the regulations, they should try to not just do the regulations, but try to give people a projection of what they are trying to achieve. At the moment, they are doing a lot of things. It's a lot of work, but I think people need to know exactly what they are trying to achieve and how they plan to achieve that. From my you will hear more about with your contacts in the government and outside and so on. You will hear more than I hear.
Really?
But
think?
what I'm
No.
I suspect so.
No. I do my
Okay.
research just like everybody else. No.
Well, yeah. Well, you see, what I was thinking is that because sometimes if you go to the supermarket, sometimes you can hear people, right? Sometimes you just hear
that
what
kind
they're
of contact. Yeah, I get more in the supermarkets when I do decide to leave the confines of my home than I do otherwise. But yeah, and those are the best one because you know what? They're on the ground. They're using the systems. They're seeing where they're the best information, the best intel you can get are those on the ground. Speak to the mom and pops. Speak of those who are in the trenches. And then you will see. Sometimes when you're sitting there in the high tower, you're only seeing it on paper. But the real life scenario works out every day when you speak to those who are front facing out there. And hence, a lot of the reasons why some things are delayed or pushed back is because guess what? When it's put in motion and you see the impacts, that's when you're like, hold on. We didn't see it from that perspective because you were only seeing it through the lens of whatever stakeholders are. But are you really seeing it in its totality of the common man, the common bystander, the really micro business who is out here dealing with all of these laws? Because that's one thing. Any laws of any land impacts everyone. And if you're fair, you're following law, it doesn't matter your creed, color, social status. Laws are laws. Some people may say, it all depends on who you are, yada, yada, yada. But what I'm saying is, they're speaking in all fairness. If laws are going to be upheld, and if they're going to be given or dished out across the board for everyone on equal footing, it isn't prejudicial. It isn't prejudicial. It's either black or it's white.
Yeah. And you see, I tend to see the whole issues of consultation with the public as being tied in with the whole issue also about institutions supporting democracy. You see, okay, somebody can go to the Anti-Corruption Commission and complain to Human Rights Commission, to the Ombudsman, and all these different bodies, Labor Board, and so on, to complain. But you are going to complain after the harm has been done. Yeah, what the government should be doing more and more is to not just to strengthen these bodies, but also just to consult generally better and inform people better. What I hear from the people I speak to in Cayman is that they are very uneasy about the whole immigration matter. They feel that the government can be commended for doing certain things, but they feel that they haven't explained certain things very well, because ultimately the question they've been asking is, will this reduce the number of status grants? Will this reduce PR? Because ultimately that's what people are asking.
Hey, sir?
Because they're saying you...
Literally 20 minutes before I went live, I got a call.
Oh, yes?
No, literally, and I will paraphrase, and I know that they will laugh. Am I going senile? Do I have amnesia? Or did I miss something? That's literal how it started. And I had to break it down with what I understood. And they were more concerned about those born between the 1977 and earlier. And what about those who were born a little bit later? Because in their particular situation, they have one child who would be deemed automatic because of the 1977 and earlier birth. And then another child, even though they already have their papers sorted out, but let's say they didn't get their child sorted out, even though they're automatic, the difference in about 4, 5, or maybe 6 years because of the year of their birth, one would have to provide evidence that a Caymanian parent was domicile and Caymanian at the time of birth, even though they're going to be automatic.
That was that was the law at that time, and
So, but literally, as I was walking up to come into the studio, I was wrapping up a call because, and they are like ourselves, they have constantly worked with immigration laws. But honestly, for the amount of, like what you've described, insufficient information, when the questions are being asked, they're really not being answered. I'm really paraphrasing the conversation. They're like, I don't think this is giving us what we want. And I know people may think that I'm saying certain things because, I'm looking for content. No, this is hardcore, true conversations that are being had by the generational Caymanians. And the question was, but Sabrina, or the statement, that's not giving us what we wanted.
No, in my view, I mean, I made that view very, very, very clear from the very beginning. They haven't given what the people want. What have the people been talking about, Sabrina? In the all the months leading up to the election, they were talking about, let me use some of the terms which I've heard on radio, that what is happening in Cayman is erasure, meaning that the local people, their culture and their people are being erased. Others are talking about, being, another term I've heard is strangers in our own land. How can this be changed, and so on? So basically, what people are looking to is that figure, the one which says how many people are Caymanians as of right, the percentage of the population, which is, there are different figures. I mean, it used to be like about 28%, but I think now it's probably down to about 20%. If you exclude
17.
status holders.
I'm hearing 17 if you exclude status holders.
It can be that low, because even when you walk around in Caymanian society, even the last time I was in Cayman, that's more where it is. So what is the government saying? The aim that people want is to try and, first of all, arrest that figure and try to bring it up a little bit. Okay? Now, I know it can never go up to 70 or 80%, but you can start working on it. this cannot be a 10 or 20-year exercise. It could even be a 50-year exercise before you can bring it back to maybe somewhere around 60%. But
You're,
it can be done.
you're quite right,
If you
but
wanted to,
it's the timing.
yeah.
It's the timing. And in doing that, bringing it back up to 50, 60%,
Mhm.
we got to admit now that will still be hybrids, so to speak.
Yes. Yes, but I think if you are going to have hybrids, that's fine because that's part of the natural evolution of the society.
Yes.
Okay, what is happening now? The problem is that the majority of the people are not even hybrids. Are people who just came from where they came and they came into Cayman, and now they are the majority. You are not even talking about their children. You are talking about they themselves who came and are
Correct.
on work permit. Have they addressed that issue? They haven't addressed it. Let me tell you, Sabrina, if you want to work on things like that, what they do, for example, in Quebec, I don't even know how well it works. They have even things where, they try to bring up the birth rate. And how they do that, they include trying to make things cheaper, like kids' clothes, kids' foods, and so on. I went to Bulgaria many, many years ago, about 1980, 82. This is when they were still under the Iron Curtain. And because Bulgaria is such a small country, they were feeling that in Europe, like there were those other countries like Germany and the other ones which were very populous. But because Bulgaria was a small country, they felt that they needed to bring up their birth rate. And what they tried to do, they worked through the tax allowances for children, free babysitting, just making everything that makes it expensive to bring up a child. They made sure that the state provided a lot of good allowances. And that's what they try to do now. It's very difficult once people decide as a matter of lifestyle that they do not want 2 or 3 kids, they want one or none. Okay, that's much.
Yeah, correct.
Oh, they don't want any. That's a much more difficult issue to deal with because it's a question of attitude. But I do believe that somewhere around maybe 50% of the people, if you made it easier for them to get those things I'm talking about, so some of them might decide to have maybe 1 or 2 kids. So that, you see, if Cayman wants to work towards reducing or increasing the proportion of Caymanian people and hybrid people, they have to have a very broad approach. It's not just about immigration and status and all that. It is a much broader issue. One of the things, for example, which people have asked for, and again, I heard this a lot on radio, was can't we give people permanent residency without status? The government hasn't addressed that. They have said, no, we are going to keep status, but we'll just increase the years from 15 to 20 years. Now, we've already talked before about how that is not going to apply now. It will apply in 20 years. But do you really think that somebody who might have gotten status at 15 years will have a problem waiting another 5 years so that they get status? I don't think so.
5 or 20.
I do not think that. From 15 to 20, you think that is going to really have any effect? No, because again, do some statistics. Look at, for example, people who got status. How many of them are still in Cayman today? I think the overwhelming number of them are in Cayman. So to me, if I've been in Cayman for 15 years and I've got PR, perhaps I'm even married to somebody local, it's not a problem for me to wait another 5 years. I do not see how many people are going to say, well, I don't want to go to Cayman because I'll have to stay 20 years instead of 15 years. Okay, I don't think people really make decisions like that. When I came to Cayman initially, I intended to stay for the length of my first contract. Okay, and then after a while, just things moved on until I remained in government in the end for 12 years. So unless this government can sit down and work out these kinds of details, I don't think, frankly, they have done anything, because that number says 17%. I can believe that because 2-3 years ago, it was about 28%. according to one research which was done.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the increase of population in the last 5 to 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
I can see how it's somewhere around 17%. And I remember Denwine one time, I think when he called you a few weeks ago, maybe months ago, he gave some statistics of how the number of birth rates were about 800 something.
Yeah.
And in Cayman, and the majority of those were expat people.
Mm-hmm.
The local people, their children were sort of like 300 something. So they were something like only about a third. And then Steve McField gave the statistic to say the local people, their birth rate is about 1.5% increased population per year. The expat people are 2.75%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I mean, if that's the case, that is you are assured that 17% will keep going down until maybe in 10, 15 years, it will be down maybe to 5 or 4%. I mean, this is like, to me, this is like looking at, I don't know, a jar of water, and you are siphoning water and the water is going down, but somehow government it doesn't want to address that. I'll tell you what my fear is, Sabrina. My fear is that maybe in private places, the government maybe have admitted that there's nothing they can do about it. But I do not think that it's because they don't want, they can't. It's because they don't want to.
Sir,
The private sector has told them,
it's
you can't do
funny
this.
that you said that, because I said it
Yeah.
at least twice. But of course,
Okay.
sometimes it is missed in transmission because you can't see the forest for the trees, meaning it would be taken that I'm making that statement because I'm not in support of either a minister or the government, which wouldn't make any sense, sir. Sir, that wouldn't make any sense. Make it make sense. But I don't think they are prepared based on how it was campaigned, based on the mandate and the ask of the people to really say, look, we tried. But the more we dug and the more we dug, yes, we will eventually get there. But how you're asking us to do it, it is unrealistic, and we will probably never, ever reach there. Like you rightfully said, maybe in 50 years. But in the same breath, and right now for us to remain sustainable in this term, maintain a certain quality of life, still being very vigilant of what's happening politically and geopolitically, being cognizant of natural disasters and self-made destruction. Hello? We can't even use the word we dropped the ball. It is, we need to educate our people that it's just not, I'm going to do it. Get rid of them. No, because you can pretty much ruin, you can cause unrest. You can pretty much, in a bad decision, impact one of your major financial pillars that could have irreparable damage or to come back.
And you see, and that is true. But I think at the end of the day, the government, in my view, has just been also too timid. Half of the things, by the way, which can be done to eliminate, particularly the issue relating to job preferences, in my view, that one is just a problem that, in my view, to be frank with you, the Chamber of Commerce controls what the government does. So whenever the Chamber of Commerce tells them, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, then they can't do it. Because for me, I don't see, for example, how you are endangering.
I think they play a significant part because of their reach. But if a cabinet really is in this kumbaya moment and reality that we're going to do this, we got the support, we're going to stand together. Yes, they do have a lot of influence because they have a very large reach. But to make a blanket statement that they control, I don't think so. But they do significantly are listened to.
We can agree that they significantly influence what government does to a point where I think, in my view, I think it's too much. Because, look, for example, I don't understand. Okay, one of our chats, I've mentioned something relating to the chief. It was the chief fire officer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who used to be there, who had only 3 O levels, and yet the job required, I believe, masters in fire science or something. They had Caymanians who had those qualifications. They were not given the job. Did they need legislation for them to appoint a Caymanian? No, they didn't need legislation.
No.
They just needed to recognize that the person who was from overseas had only 3 O levels. They were not qualified for the job. The Caymanian was qualified academically to take over the job.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from being academically qualified, they had also the local experience. That should have been enough for them to be given the job. Why were they not given the job like 10, 12 years ago when the other person was recruited?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need legislation for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You don't need legislation. You've got certain people, I won't call their names, 2 people, women, happen to be women, both of them, who I think today they could have been judges in the Grand Court. Maybe one of them even Chief Justice or Deputy Chief Justice, although that position doesn't exist. But you can create these positions. Why haven't those people been appointed? It's not because of legislation, although you could use legislation to be able to force issues like that. I mean, look, this other lady who I mentioned last time, who was in the portfolio of legal affairs for 16 years. 16 years as a litigator. You go to the law reports, her name is there. And then she becomes court administrator. And then after being court administrator, then suddenly she is a part-time magistrate. And now I understand she's out of the judiciary. They have now brought her back to give her, I understand, some kind of consultancy job to help set up a certain office. In other words, somebody who could have been a judge, now you are bringing them to do that little bit of work. To me, those impediments are not legal. It is because there's no vision. In other countries, what they would have done, for example, for that lady, they would have said, you are one of the few of our people who have stayed in. They could have even arranged it in such a way that she could become a judge, and then within 4 or 5 years, make her deputy chief justice. And then when Smelly went, they could have made her chief justice. That's the way they do it in other countries. And they don't need legislation to do that. Although you can, if you want, amend the Judicature Act to say that whenever there are applications, Caymanians must be given preference. You can do that. But a lot of the stuff that is done out there, there is no need for legislation. But I just find the attitude and the vision is not there to allow people, Caymanians, to do it. I mean, I can give so many other examples of people who have suffered, not because there's no legislation to protect them.
Does that say a lot, too, about those who may be on the employment committee? That the threshold, it's almost like you're nothing in your own country, but you're an asset to another man's. You can't, there's a saying, you're not a king in your own country or a queen in your own country, but you become that in another man's country. I think it's a lot of, yeah, it's, I don't remember.
Yeah, the thing about is that the same one as the prophet has no honor in his own land, something like that.
Yeah, something like
that. But
anyway,
there are various versions of that. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
you see, to me, and I'll tell you the way where I came from, because there was a time when we also had a lot of expatriate people, and what they did with me was I started as a prosecutor. And then after that, I joined legislative drafting. Then I went to England for 5 months at an institute, which is now part of the University of London. Then I went back home. Then I came to Canada for 2.5 years, did a master's in legislation, and then went back home. By that time, my total experience, together with the time I spent at school training, was 10 years. They looked at my references and how I worked and everything, and they promoted me into that position.
Mm-hmm.
If they had said that job was going to be advertised internationally,
Right.
They were going to get people, of course, who had 30 years experience. I was never going to get it. And this is something that people in Cayman have also talked about. They have said, if there's a Caymanian who is a deputy to a certain person, and that person leaves, and if that person works well, and their references are good, they don't have any obvious problems, why can't you promote them? Or you could make them act with a view to promotion. They work for 1 year. At the end of 1 year, you look at the assessments, and then you give them the job. But that particular suggestion was rejected one time in Parliament by the government. It was rejected. I remember Gloria McField Nixon was the one who was acting deputy governor then. And what she said was, well, if we were to do things like that, it would cheapen those people who are getting those jobs. At that point, I said, well, this cause then is lost. What do you mean it cheapens them? In a lot of countries, that's what they do. They promote people, especially when they are local people. That's how you get. I mean, nobody is saying promote a person who is not qualified for the job.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody is saying that. But to me,
Give them a
I don't want to
chance.
use
I
it.
think bottom line
Yeah,
is
yeah,
people
yeah.
just want to be given a chance. And if the requirements for certain positions is just so far
Mhm.
afield, but yet in many
Mhm.
cases our very own are doing the job, then somebody needs to
Mhm.
give them a chance. When you see all
Yeah.
of these
If
degrees
you,
and that degree, but yet the person is in the role doing the job, why not? Especially your own.
yeah. Where are you going to get a chance if you can't get a chance in your own country? I mean, you can't go to England today or to America with some limited experience and expect to have a good job. You can't do that because they
Correct.
are looking after their own people.
Correct.
In your own country, you can still be given an opportunity, but still standards can be maintained.
Mhm.
But you see, another thing that some people don't seem to understand in Cayman, some people, not all of them, is that whenever somebody wants to fight you, they will never tell you that we don't want to give you the job because you are a native or because we want to get somebody from the UK. They will give you some silly excuse. Like one of the silly excuses has been, they should upskill themselves so that they can rise to these positions. I like what Chris Saunders says, and he said this twice. One time during an election debate, and I think another time on radio.
Mhm.
He said, you know what? Why do you keep talking about Caymanians upskilling themselves? Do you know that even people who have upskilled themselves
Mhm.
can't get certain jobs?
Mhm.
Okay. And there are sometimes even those jobs have gone to people who are less qualified than them. So stop talking this thing about upskilling. The fundamental problem with Caymanians not getting into certain jobs is not upskilling. It is just discrimination. Maybe there's one odd person out of 10 who needed to be upskilled to qualify. But it really is only about 1 in 10. The rest of the people are qualified, but they are just being kept out by saying you should upskill themselves. Then sometimes there's an excuse of saying, oh, but you are overqualified for the job. I remember a young lady, there was some years back when Alden was in opposition and they arranged a march from Prospect coming to the city. And I remember watching that lady. She was a Caymanian young lady.
Mhm.
She said, they interviewed her, as part of the demonstration there. They said, so why are you here marching? She said, you know what? I've got a bachelor's in hospitality and I've got a master's as well.
Mhm.
I can't even get a job to be a waiter, to be a waitress. I can't. I am ready to do that and to climb up, but I can't get even that. A few months later, there was this YouTube video which was spread on the internet, where there was a lady from Canada. She said, "Oh, you know what? Come to the Cayman Islands. This place is very good for expatriates. I looked for a job as a bartender. I didn't even have experience, but they gave me a work permit. I'm working here now." Can you imagine? Do you see? So the problem is there are just certain practices which are not being put in place. Look at the regulation 6, I think it is the regulation 6 of the immigration law, immigration regulations. It used to say that when you apply for a work permit, you must have a succession plan to show, that you shall provide a succession plan. What happened? The government of the day, they changed that from shall to may.
Me.
So today is still May. Why doesn't this NCNF, the acronym is so difficult, NCNF, SF government, whatever it is, why don't they change it back to shall? Okay. Why don't they change it
Well,
back to shall? They
who to
haven't done
tell?
that.
That may be one of the amendments that is coming to the amended that was to the amendment that was amended and still being amended.
Well, that would be, I don't know, maybe it is still coming, but what also disappointed me was that I think they do have an amendment to the Public Service Management Act yeah, to implement this rollover in
Yeah.
government.
Yeah.
I thought they would have done another amendment there, because that's another amendment I think they should do about in section 26 and 41. They need to say that if you are a local person and you qualify for the job, you must be first considered. And if you qualify, they should give you the job rather than give it to an expert. Right now, it doesn't say that. It just says, well, if your qualifications are roughly the same as the foreigner, then they'll consider you. But that doesn't give you any preference. Those are the sorts of changes they need to make. And they haven't made them. This particular one, well, the one about may and shall, maybe they might do it in regulations. But the one about the Public Service Management Act, they haven't done it, but they should have done it in the one that they took to Parliament. So I know they don't want to do it. So do you see? I mean, how are you going to give your own local people preference if you don't do that? So that's why I agree with the general statement that this government has not delivered on what the bottom line is, what people asked for, a real preference in jobs, and to work a long-term system in which they can try to limit the number of people who get status. They can keep giving PR. Okay, they can keep giving because they need to comply with certain international requirements regarding giving people permanence. They can give PR. I remember a very distinguished lady from West Bay. She called out. I won't call her name. She called one time and said, "Isn't there a legal way in which people can get PR but not get status?" That has not been addressed. And another thing that Michael was mentioning, the Honorable Michael Miles, he said, "Well, we have to allow these people who have got a legitimate expectation now to apply." Well, let me back up a little bit. The change that he was suggesting was forgotten, was one where they grandfathered in people in already in Cayman now for the purposes of PR. They grandfathered them in for the purposes of PR so that they can apply at the end of 8 years rather than 9. But then they said, well, what they forgot to do, they forgot to grandfather those same people for the purposes of status. Okay. But why do they have to grandfather them twice? Okay.
Yeah, no, you don't. Oh gosh, no. Unless the verbiage was so rigid that there's no way it could be interpreted any. Oh no, but that's a total different section.
Yeah.
Unless they said after this
Yeah.
you can't make any more applications. That's not making much sense.
It's not making sense because they haven't applied for status anyway yet, so the issue doesn't even arise.
It's a separate section of the law. It has nothing to do with PR. It's a legal
Exactly.
and
It's a separate section of the law.
requirement that meets that.
Yeah, because if anything, you could tell them to say, you know what, if we wanted by law, we don't even have to grandfather in you because there's nothing legally which prevents us from refusing to grandfather you for PR. But we'll grandfather you for PR, but not for status. That would have been fair still. But then they said, no, we'll now grandfather you for both, even that which you have not yet applied for.
No, that's not making no sense. I'm hoping that was I hope that was a misspoken.
No, he didn't misspeak because I heard him when he spoke to OC. I thought that is what I heard. And then when he spoke in Parliament, he said the same thing. So they are grandfathering them in twice. Okay. So to me, you have grandfathered in everybody. So what have you done? Okay, you have grandfathered in everybody. So do you see?
That's putting
they haven't explained
a final deadbolt on the door that we've definitely created the pathway to status even more. But it wasn't because it was already there.
Yeah, you've let out the horse and now you are closing it, but you say we are going to close it very tightly. Now, look, I mean, I won't pretend that immigration is going to be very difficult to do even now, but I just feel that the fundamentals have not been dealt with. They haven't done what people wanted to be done, and the price is going to be paid. I don't think Cayman will be recognizable even in 10 years' time.
I'm chuckling,
I just don't think so.
I think you'd find this comical but sad at the same time. Denver says, the grandfather it in twice because they said you have a grandfather and a great-grandfather. I know you would find the humor in it. Denver,
Of
you do
course
have
it
a
is.
sense of humor. That came out this evening.
He should send that to Michael and see if it can, make him think again. It's, I mean, look, nobody wants to be unfair to people who came to Cayman and try to build their life and so on. But I think if you say, well, look, we'll grandfather in some people for the purposes of PR, you can do that. I was speaking to a former MP some time back, and he reminded me that some time back, what they did, instead of providing a wholesale grandfathering in, what they said was, okay, if you've been in Cayman about, I think it was 5 years or so, that then they'll grandfather you in if you've been in Cayman 5 years. But if you were in Cayman less than 5 years, then they say, well, you haven't invested much anyway. We don't have to grandfather you in. But what they have done now is they've grandfathered in everybody. They've just said, so long as you are in government now or you're in Cayman now, your period year one for you is 2026. That's when 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I know very well that even when I listened to the deputy governor on Tammy's show, he also said somewhat the same thing. So really, they haven't done much, and I think that's why they are refusing to give any figures, because they should know that even the figures themselves, they can't give you any projection which is likely to be correct. Because only last year, how many statuses did they give? 1,500. Okay, about 400 or so might have been backlog. But you can be sure that from now up to 15 years, there will be about 1,000 to 1,200 grants of status every single year. What does that do for you? It just drowns you down all the way down. What they need to do is just say, look, let us give people PR because that gives them permanence and so on. But status, people have said, status, why don't you limit status? You can give them PR. But why? But those issues are not being answered. Oh, a little question I wanted to mention. What Michael said as well in Parliament was, well, he said, well, this thing about legitimate expectation. That thing, we talked about it for a long time. There is no legitimate expectation that laws will never change. Okay? I've said it, I don't know how many times. Even if you apply today and the new law comes into effect, so long as the law makes it clear, they can even tell you to take back your application and apply under the new law, so long as the law makes it clear. You see, legitimate expectation is a legal concept which applies to other things other than legislation. For example, if you are applying, and there are cases which happened in Cayman. You go to apply, say, for a license, and then they tell you, okay, we've looked at your papers. Now I think there's no problem granting you your license, so we'll send you your papers soon. Then you find they don't give it to you. You can go back, and then let us imagine they raise some issue. Oh no, but you see, we have decided otherwise. You can say, no, I have a legitimate expectation because you promised me. Okay. Now, the way in which sometimes legitimate expectation doesn't work is, for example, they were going to give you the license illegally. Like, say, the statute doesn't actually allow them to give you. Let me give you an example. You are a 20-year-old applying for a liquor license. They tell you they are going to give you a license, and then they didn't realize you were actually 20 years old. And then when they check the papers again, they find actually you are underage. Then they can say, no, we won't give you the license because we made a mistake, because legitimate expectation does not allow us to defy the law. Okay? So, I mean, it's a complicated thing for discussing on radio, but there is nothing. The reason why this grandfathering in had been done is a policy question. The government has chosen to do this level of grandfathering in. There is no legal impediment to them refusing to give this level of grandfathering in. That they are free to do. But what they need to do, they need to tell the people that we are doing this as a policy issue rather than a legal issue. But what they've been doing is they've been pretending as if it's a legal issue when it is not a legal issue. Again, it goes back to explaining to people, to tell them, why they've done certain things. But me, I really think privately they have given up.
Really?
They have been told that the economy is going to go down. The economy is not going to go down. There are too many people who still want to come to Cayman, but they have used this thing about scare tactics. Oh, if you do this,
Yeah.
you see, oh, the economy is going to do. If you do this, it's going to go down. And then some people even say, oh, but you see, if we are too strict, we won't attract the best people. That's nonsense. Half the British people in the Cayman Islands who are working, some of them couldn't get jobs in the UK. What are you talking about? A lot of them came to Cayman because they are desperate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know somebody who was a hairdresser. After they qualified as a paralegal in the UK, they couldn't quite get a job. They couldn't get articles, so they were running a place doing hair. And then they looked into the islands. Then they found, in the Cayman Islands, they are asking for a paralegal. So the person came to Cayman as a paralegal, and then later on they played their game. They got an exemption from doing articles in Cayman. They were called to the bar in Cayman. Within months, they were back in the UK. So
Yeah, I want to answer this, and since you're there, just to the
Yeah.
Andrew has 3 questions, and I can answer them, and you can weigh in if you want. But the question is,
okay.
This is a question first. Islands, there are a limit. My thinking is asking, is there a limit to the amount of rollovers an individual can do? The quick answer is no. Once they have the break of a year, they can come back once they get an approved work permit. Second question.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
I have seen some cases of companies with work permits as much as 5 times or more, meaning that a particular staff have been rolled over multiple times. And he goes on to say permanent residence qualification is $2 million or more with purchase of real estate and proof of financial capability to fund their financial well-being here. Is that correct? Now, under the immigration regulations of 2005 that I found, that specific amount is for investment for independent means, and that is under 14B. Investment required for applicants for certificate of permanent residence of independent means, and it reads, in pursuance of Section 42, an applicant for a certificate of permanent residence for persons of independent means shall satisfy the directive WORC that the applicant has invested $2 million in developed real estate in the islands. And then there's another one for investment, for direct investment, that says that's for 14A. In pursuant to 47, an applicant for a certificate of direct investment shall satisfy the director of work that the applicant process to invest or proposes to invest or has invested a sum of at least $1 million in an employment generating business. So, Andrew, when you talk about, and it goes on to more, because even independent means there's more, applicant has invested the sum of at least $500,000, of which at least $250,000 must be in developed real estate in Cayman Brac or Little Cayman. So it's a little less for the sister islands, okay? But this is the regulations, Andrew, and this is what people are not seeing with the one that was passed in 2025 that's still not in the public's domain. What I'm reading right now is the regulations of that is the one that is current. I stand to be corrected. So those are the thresholds, is what I'm trying to say. So the 2 million that you're actually drawing out, Andrew, is not for the regular 8-year PR. This is for the person of independent means. And then there's one for direct investment. There's also for establishment of substantial business presence in the islands. And those also have to prove that to the director of work that through the purchase or lease of a commercial real estate, the business has established a physical presence in the islands, and whether the business in question employs or will employ a minimum of 4 full-time employees who are legal and ordinarily resident in the islands for a minimum of 9 months in any calendar year. Stick a pin right there, sir. There's nothing that says it demands these people to employ Caymanians. I read again. Whether the business in question employs or will employ a minimum of 4 full-time employees who are
Yeah.
legally and ordinarily resident in the islands for a minimum of 9 months in any calendar year. And then it
Yeah.
goes on to
Yeah.
say the following categories of business that it has to fall under that is fund administration, brokerage services, investment fund managing services, investment banking, captive insurance, reinsurance underwriting, actuarial services, insurance claim, family office, hedge funds, incubation, and any business operating from within Cayman Brac providing human resources, accounting, administrative, IT, or back office support to businesses in Cayman Brac and elsewhere, and any company registered as an exempted company under 164 of the Companies Act 2025 revision. Now, you're talking about employing Caymanians, and I heard you say that, but here you have it embedded in regulations, the operational arm of a substantive piece of law that doesn't say you must provide proof that you employ 4 full-time Caymanians. It says persons who are legal and ordinarily resident.
Yeah. You see, these are the issues, Sabrina. If they want to really deal with this issue of Caymanians being employed, these are some of the little issues they have to deal with. They haven't dealt with them. Their central issue has been, half the people getting status are married. Are married to Caymanians, so we are going to restrict it to say it should be 20 years and so on. Even that, I don't believe. I personally do not believe that. I think last time I made the point, I want to reiterate it today, that I do not believe that there will be anybody caught by that 20 years, because by the time some of these people, like for those who have marriages which last, and they reach 10, 12 years, it will become a political issue as to why they still don't have status. Okay? Like for somebody to wait, you are in Cayman, you are married to somebody, and you are there, your children are now 14, 15, 16 years, and they still say that you have to wait until maybe your child is even 20 years before you get status. I think it will become a political issue. There will be pressure on whatever government is in force in place at that time to change that. It may never ever catch anybody.
Unless they change
that's
the
my
requirements to acquiring Caymanian status on the grounds of British nationality, which they can't touch. That would be the only backdoor caveat, because once they have actually acquired residency as the spouse of a Caymanian, unless they're going to change that, and they can demonstrate where they have been legal and ordinarily resident in the islands. Because remember now, residency as employment rights certificate spouse of Caymanian, that does no longer carry, under the current law, an expiry date. Remember.
Because that's a change they have made.
So through that provision, persons can actually get naturalized.
Yeah.
And once
by the
they've
way,
been
I don't
naturalized for 5 years, they can apply for Caymanian status.
Yeah, it's
A little, the legal and ordinary residence is entangled in that as well. But what I'm saying, if you're just waiting for your marriage anniversary to be 20 years, there's always British Nationality Act that cannot be changed by locals or local sitting politician. That has to be changed in the UK.
But you know, Sabrina, that's very interesting, because they have purported to change that, unless I misunderstood them, because they say that they were raising the number of years that you need to be in Cayman to be naturalized. I don't know whether they got legal advice about that. So
but
I mean,
the resident under the 1985 British Nationality Act, unless they've made a trip to the UK and that was done, the only thing they can change in regards to acquiring that is on the local side of things, the eligibility requirement. But it's still tricky, because you have a legal and ordinary resident under the British Nationality Act. You have that right that really and truly the director of work or the board would have a hard time saying no once you meet the residency requirement.
if you reach 9 years of residency, right? You like under the current law before they change it, 8 years you get PR. At the end of 9 years, you can naturalize and get your Cayman passport and your British passport at the same time, and you get those under the British Act, under the British Nationality Act. But there's something they have put in this legislation which they claim that they have lengthened that period of time. I'm still to understand exactly how they
Oh,
can do that.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm still to understand, because one time when Michael Miles was on Radio Cayman, before the legislation was announced, or about that time, I called in. I said, but does the minister understand that you can't change the British Nationality Act in relation to
You can't.
naturalization for the
Local
purposes of
governments can't.
BOTC?
Correct.
Yeah, and one of his staff said, "Oh, the minister is aware of that." And I said, "Okay, fine." But then when the legislation came out, I found that they are purporting to change that. But again, I don't know. Maybe the British Nationality Act was amended
Well, we
to
have to
give them
wait
the
and see.
discretion to do that. I don't know. Yeah, we have to wait and
It's
see how
all
that is
holding
going
your
to work
breath,
out.
wait and see. And it's good that we can have these conversations, and I'm hoping that we don't lose a lot of the audience, because there's a lot of context that we have here. And what is sad,
Yeah,
until we all get our civil society up to speed with this level of conversation, it may be some
yeah,
rough sessions that we will have on this platform,
yeah.
but
Mm-hmm,
eventually it will all make sense, because based on questions that are coming in, statements are being
mm-hmm.
made, like what Andrew posed and stuff. That's a learning curve. I can pull it up very
Yeah,
quickly on current legislation, what is being proposed, which we can't show the regulations of what's being proposed, whether or not that threshold is more or less or whatever. But I can tell you what's
yeah,
in play right now. And
yeah.
I'm hoping that people will understand this from the context of being more informed, so that the realities of what you're purporting is that they're in a bind where they're like, "Oh my God, I'm done. We can't do this anymore." But I can't tell the people that, because it will look as though I'm failing. To me, you would get
Yeah.
more respect if you be honest and we continue to educate our people, than
Okay.
to
Yeah.
create inflict pain because you're trying to protect egos. And this is not in isolation of anybody, because right now people have to understand that unless they're holding information from the public, that
Mm-hmm,
certain things are done, then that's going to show them in a different light as well, because it's all about
mm-hmm,
transparency at all times, right? So you
mm-hmm.
don't want to leave room for any speculation in the public's domain for something as important as this, is all I would like to say.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point on which to end. At least from my end, I think that there is need for this government to sit down and really explain this to people. They didn't do a very good job explaining last time, and I think that people need to be told exactly what their targets are. Their targets have not been mentioned, and they have not responded. If the question was, have they responded to the people's demands or not? The answer is no, they have not. Let me leave you there, Sabrina. Very nice discussion as well.
Always pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Always
Okay. Bye
good.
bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye. Yes. There's a question, Tartarian. Remember now, also, once they get status, they do not have to renounce their homeland citizenship. So does Caymanian status really mean anything? What does Caymanian status mean to an expat? And questions. Okay. It's totally freedom of immigration control. The amount of freedom that they are able to get in regards to their movement, operation of business, the right to vote, that's priceless in some countries. So and no, they don't have to actually renounce their birthright citizen, which is what was the suggestion of one of our other commenters in another podcast. Is that the way that we're supposed to be going? Can it be done, being that we are a British overseas territory jurisdiction? So in all honesty, what does Caymanian status mean to an expat? That's an open door for opportunities that locals many a times don't even see. And obviously, many of the opportunities that continue to give from discussions being had comes about only after they get their status. So yeah, that is a golden ticket, Tartarian, even though your question could be out of sarcasm. But, at the end of the day, you're not restricted because you're no longer on work permits to one employer or based on amendments, multiple employers. You're no longer on permanent residence that is attracting an annual fee and still limits you with how much or what occupation or occupations you are able to work in. Once status is approved, that is a one-time fee and it's open season. So yeah, what does it mean? I would love to get a true, honest answer from an expat to answer you on that, because the freedom is endless. But what people are not asking for some or is unaware of, the journey to acquiring that. I got a few stories of good, well-intended individuals who come here, who built with us, who will stand in the front lines and defend Caymanians, who paid their way because of our immigration legislation, got to the Caymanian status phase and really, really have embraced it. But for what they've been through with bad employers, just a whole navigating of the system, they have children that are born here, the only home that they know. I would tell you for sure a couple hundred that mean us well. And they really embrace Cayman as their home. They are at some of the local points and spots, and they're a part of our society. Their kids, they actually will tell you this is home. So, but the freedom that it has given them, no more fronting. It is what it is. How much of them actually partners with locals and until they get their status? Now, on the flip side, some of them will actually go on their own and compete with the same Caymanian company that actually gave them the hand up and hand out when the partnership could have actually continued after status. That's the other dark side. But for the most part, in keeping it, instead of going down a rabbit hole, what does Caymanian status mean to an expat? It's a golden ticket. It's a golden ticket. It removes the shackles. It's a way out of immigration jail. It's a way out of annual fees. It's a way out of PR declarations. But hold on. The status now under the new proposal is that now for the next, I think 5 years was what is proposed. Even after status is granted, under any status granted, once this new law comes into effect, even status holders now have to file an annual declaration that now will attract a fee. So a processing fee, from what I'm understanding. Now, bearing in mind, we have to, just like you guys in civil society, I have to sit down and look at a number of the shows. I have to depend on social media as well in regards to any information that's being dispensed from the various government departments and agencies, that sort of stuff, in order to be able to come here. I depend on government websites and what is being posted. I depend on gazettes and that sort of stuff in order to deliver factual information here. And a lot of the times, I'm looking for the pieces just like you. So whether or not we have some improvement to do for further clarity, for further context, so that when we're engaging and discussing certain things in the public space, like when we go to certain watering holes, I have been getting an increased amount of calls just for clarity, to make sure that they're thinking, because they may have heard a statement made, they may have heard another, the minister or ministers on other media houses, and it wasn't coming across. And then they're like, what does this mean? This was said, and I really can't say, because not all of them I can keep up with. But based on me reading, based on me delivering certain things in layman's terms, I'm able to actually clarify a lot of things. So it still says that there is a gap missing in accessing of information. Tartarian. So it has nothing to do with wanting to be like Caymanian. Interesting. No, I gave a number of reasons. If they decide to come here and make here their home, that is deciding. Being like Caymanian is a mixture. I'm going to defend it because of neutrality and just being unbiased Tartarian. It's a mixture of both. We have been a society that has created an environment, despite our unfortunate generational numbers falling to a record low and may continue to decline. Right now, it's between 20 to 17%. If we've created an environment that even those good persons who may have taught me and you at school is differentiated differently because they have done everything, have never been home for 40, 50 years. Cayman is their home. Their grandchildren, great grandchildren are here, but they're still ostracized as not being us. How can you say they're not wanting to be like a Caymanian? How can you say that? I have Malaysian friends whose children are. I have a Canadian, two friends that came here that just stands out to mind, that they have always wanted to be like Caymanian. And they worked their way through the work permit system, have overcome challenges, now have families running their businesses, and they've always aspired. But with some of the talk is that they know that they will never be embraced as Caymanian. I have a friend who manage hedge funds. That man, when he used to work, he used to walk down the road behind McDonald's. There used to be a restaurant just looking for Cayman style beef. And he loved oxtails and he would suck on a piece of cow foot right now. We need to change this. There are a lot that would want to be, but based on the narrative, it's a balance turn off to many, to be honest. Darlene, it's priceless. Concurred majority, or almost all of us, our local lives. Wake up, not having to renounce their citizen actually protects Caymanian. There you go. Well, that brings us to another end of another episode of Sabrina Speaks. I hope that there were lots of stuff taken away here today. Tartarian, I don't mind us continuing this conversation, but we have to look at this at a balanced approach. I know many who only see Cayman as Caymanian. They like the Bobos and the TDs, and they will definitely want to be a part. But straight up, the reality is right now, I have seen a lot of them sunk based on the environment. There are some that are aspiring. They have maybe done 2 or 3 rollovers, which is really now to the point where they're getting their ducks together and really want to be a part of us, but they never feel that there will ever be a part of us. So it's a delicate balance, Tartarian, but I love you still, of course. Mr. Fullerton, good to have you in. I hope you weren't late to class, but it's always good to have you here. That brings me to another end, and I got to say goodbye. Thank you for joining us. Please join me tomorrow evening for another episode of Sabrina Speaks right here on cmrtv.com. Please be safe on our roads. To all of our frontline staff, thank you for your services. Good night. God bless. Love you lots.
That's a wrap for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks. Thank you for tuning in and for being part of the conversation. Remember, the dialogue doesn't stop here. Stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, stay empowered. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m., same time, same place, right here on CMR TV and radio, where your voice matters and your truth is heard. Until then, Cayman, take care of yourself and each other.
That's it for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks, where your voice matters, your story counts, and your truth is always welcome. Join us weekdays from 5 until 6:30 p.m. right here on CMR TV as we dive into the topics that matter most to you. Catch the show live or on demand at cmrtv.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram so you never miss a moment. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and always speak your truth.